You'd think a man who saves lives every day would be appreciated at home. I'm a trauma surgeon. I deal with the messiest parts of life: car crashes, stabbings, freak accidents with power tools. I keep my hands steady even when blood is spraying, even when someone's lungs are collapsing beneath my fingertips. I've brought people back from the edge. I've watched hearts stop and beat again because I didn't give up. That's what I do. That's what I'm good at. But none of that mattered when I walked through the front door of our house. My name's Jake. I'm 37. Ordinary in every sense, except maybe the job. I grew up in Ohio, went to med school in Chicago, married my college sweetheart, and now I live in a nice 2-story home in a quiet neighborhood that looks perfect from the outside. And I thought my wife, Amanda, was perfect once too. We'd been married 10 years. She used to look at me like I was her hero. Back when we were young and broke and trying to figure out life together. But something changed over the years. Maybe it was me. Maybe it was the hours I spent in the hospital, the missed dinners, the nights I came home smelling like blood and antiseptic. Maybe it was her. The way she started spending more time on social media than talking to me. The way she looked at other men when she thought I wasn't watching. Still, I stayed loyal. That's what I do. It was a Monday morning when everything began to unravel. I had just finished a brutal 20-hour shift. I came home to find Amanda wasn't there. No note. No message. The bed was cold, untouched. I shrugged it off. Maybe she stayed with a friend. Maybe she just needed space. I showered, brewed coffee, and turned on the news. That's when I saw it. Breaking news: passenger yacht Mistral Dawn capsizes off the Florida coast. Casualties confirmed. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I froze. The screen flashed images of the broken vessel, splintered wood, overturned hull, helicopters swarming above the waves. The name of the ship was familiar. Too familiar. My father had mentioned it in our last phone call, 3 weeks ago. It's an old dream, Jake, he'd said. Sailing out there, no cell phones, no noise. Just water and stars. I stared at the TV, heart racing, fingers trembling. The list of passengers started scrolling. And there it was. Mark Sanderson, my father. I dropped the coffee mug. It shattered across the floor. The funeral was 2 days later in Florida. I flew down alone. Amanda didn't come. She said she had a yoga retreat scheduled. I didn't even argue. What was the point? I stood at the edge of the sand, dressed in black, watching the waves crash against the shore. There wasn't much to bury. The Coast Guard recovered his watch and wedding ring. That's all. The sea had taken the rest. My father and I weren't always close. But damn, I respected him. He was a Vietnam vet, a man who worked with his hands, roofing, carpentry, whatever paid the bills. He wasn't emotional. He didn't talk about feelings. But when I was 13 and I broke my arm falling out of a tree, he carried me all the way to the ER. And when I graduated med school, he stood up and clapped like I had just won an Olympic medal. I didn't cry at the funeral. I was too numb. That night, back at my hotel room, I poured myself a drink and sat on the bed. I thought about calling Amanda. Just to hear her voice. Just to feel like someone still gave a damn. Instead, I opened Instagram. Bad idea. There she was. Amanda. My wife. Wearing a tight, short red dress, thigh-high stockings, and what looked like a black thong peeking out beneath the hem. She was holding a drink and smiling at someone just off camera. The room behind her wasn't ours. The wallpaper was different. The lighting. The furniture. I clicked the tag. Some guy named Chaz Body Electric. Another photo. Amanda again, this time sitting on his lap, her lips dangerously close to his neck. I scrolled. More pictures. Different guys. Different nights. Lingerie, kisses, lap dances. She wasn't hiding it. Not even a little. I sat there, gripping my phone like it was a scalpel, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a surgeon. I felt like a fool. But I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I didn't call her. Because I knew something most men in my position didn't. The body heals from clean cuts. But betrayal? That's more like a bullet wound. Messy. Deep. Dangerous if not treated right. I needed time. Space. Control. And most of all, I needed to understand why. Because part of me still loved her. God help me, I did. The flight back from Florida was silent. I didn't listen to music. I didn't watch the in-flight movie. I just sat with my thoughts, replaying every memory of Amanda I could find, our wedding day, the way she used to fall asleep with her head on my chest, the little notes she used to leave in my coat pocket with hearts drawn in the corners. Then I saw the image again. That red dress. Those stockings. Her lips parted in that fake, sultry smile she used to give me when she wanted something. The woman in those photos wasn't my wife. But it was her account. Her hands. Her legs wrapped around someone else. When I got home, the house was spotless. Amanda was in the kitchen making avocado toast like it was just another Sunday morning. "Hey, babe," she said, like she hadn't been in half the zip codes in the city with half-naked strangers while I was burying my father. I dropped my duffel bag by the door. My heart was thumping so hard it echoed in my ears. "Funeral was nice," I said, monotone. "Oh. I'm sorry I couldn't be there. You know, retreat." She smiled. "How was it?" She didn't ask about my dad. She asked about it like I'd gone to a conference. Like I'd shaken hands and picked up brochures about grief. "Do you think I'm stupid?" I asked calmly, eyes still fixed on her. She blinked. "What?" I saw the photos, Amanda. Her hand froze halfway to her toast. The red dress. The house. The men. I expected panic. Shame. Something. But she just let out a slow breath and said, "You were never home." That hit harder than a punch. Still, I stayed quiet. I waited, she continued. "Years, Jake. Do you know how many dinners I sat through alone? How many nights I watched the ceiling while you were off saving strangers?" I nodded slowly. "So you punished me by sleeping around while I was burying my dad?" That got her. Her expression twitched. A flash of guilt, maybe. But it was gone in a blink. "I didn't plan it," she said, her voice suddenly soft. "It just happened. And then it kept happening." She didn't even deny it. I looked down at the floor. One of her high heels was laying on its side near the stairs. Probably from the last guy. "I saved a little girl's life last week," I said, more to myself than to her. 6 years old. Internal bleeding. I spent 12 hours inside that OR. "Do you know what it feels like to bring someone back from the dead?" She didn't answer. "You know what I came home to that night?" I looked up at her, hollow. "A note that said you were getting drinks with Jules from Pilates." Amanda's eyes welled up a little. "I didn't know if it was real or not. I never wanted to hurt you, Jake. But you did." That night, I slept on the couch. She didn't come down. Didn't ask if I was okay. She just let the silence settle over us like dust. And I lay there, staring at the ceiling, wondering why the hell I wasn't packing my bags. Maybe it was habit. Maybe it was hope. Or maybe it was because after saving so many people, I didn't know how to give up on someone. Even someone who gave up on me. The next morning, I went back to the hospital. Scrubbed in. Sewed someone's spleen back together. Stabilized a kid who'd flipped his ATV. Shook hands with a grateful mother who cried in my arms. Everywhere I went, people saw me as a savior. At home, I was just a ghost in surgical scrubs. That evening, I pulled into the driveway and saw a strange car parked out front. A black Camaro. Plates from Texas. I stood there, keys in hand, breathing slow. Then the front door opened, and there she was. Amanda. In a silk robe. Laughing. Behind her was a man in jeans and a leather jacket, about 40, built like a gym membership commercial. They both froze when they saw me. "Oh, Jake," Amanda said quickly, "this is..." "Don't," I cut in. The man gave me a smirk. Not the respectful kind. The kind that says, "Yeah, I know your wife." Intimately. I walked past them, up the stairs, straight into the bathroom. Locked the door. Turned on the shower. And for the first time in years, I cried. Not loud. Not messy. Just quiet tears, like a man bleeding out slowly from a wound no one can see. I didn't leave. Not yet. Because part of me was still holding out hope that this, whatever this was, could be stitched back together. But the surgeon in me already knew the truth. Some wounds can't be closed. Some breaks run too deep. And the worst pain? Is the kind that doesn't show up on scans. The next morning came with silence. Amanda didn't say a word about the man from last night. No apologies. No explanations. Just another cup of coffee waiting on the counter and the faint scent of some new floral body spray she was probably wearing for someone else. I didn't touch the coffee. I didn't ask who he was. Instead, I stared at the tiled backsplash of our kitchen while eggs sizzled in the pan and wondered how a home could rot so quietly from the inside out. The truth? I was still too tired to do anything about it. You see, in the OR, we're trained to compartmentalize. You shove the panic into a box and keep your focus on the cut, the clamp, the next breath. It's the only way to keep someone alive when their guts are spilling onto the table. But I was starting to realize that maybe I'd carried that same habit home with me, patching over what was broken, pretending if I just kept working, if I just kept fixing, eventually the bleeding would stop. But the house kept bleeding. My heart kept bleeding. And Amanda kept living like none of it mattered. 3 days passed. 3 days of shared silence, forced smiles, and pretending not to notice when she walked into the bathroom with her phone on speaker, giggling. I worked double shifts at the hospital just to avoid her. I told the chief I was ready for more hours. He asked if everything was okay at home. I gave him the same look I give families in the waiting room when we both know the prognosis is bad. He didn't ask again. On Friday, I sat in the on-call room scrolling through Instagram again. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I wanted to be hurt. Maybe I was looking for proof that I wasn't crazy. Sure enough, there she was. Amanda. Dressed like a college girl, sitting on a stranger's kitchen counter, heels on, lips parted, bottle of champagne between her legs. The caption was tagged, "Wild Night with the Queen Crown #Unstoppable #ThirstTrapThursday." The man from the Camaro was in the background, holding her waist. I stared at the photo so long my phone screen dimmed. Later that night, after my shift, I didn't go home. I drove to the edge of the city and parked under a dim street lamp. My hands gripped the steering wheel like I was prepping for surgery. My chest felt tight, and I knew it wasn't cardiac. It was something deeper. Something emotional surgeons don't get trained to cut out. My phone buzzed. A text from Amanda. "Did you pick up milk?" That was it. Not where are you, not let's talk, not I'm sorry. Just milk. I laughed. The kind of laugh that feels more like choking. Then I looked at my screen again, and an impulse hit me. I opened our home Wi-Fi network history. I'd installed router monitoring months ago to catch our neighbor's kid piggybacking on our internet. Forgot I still had the login saved. The log showed every device connected. Amanda's phone. Her tablet. A few unknown ones that weren't mine. I clicked one of them. Late-night logins. Streaming porn. Messaging apps I didn't even recognize. Another device. iPhone. History full of anonymous Tinder-like apps. Locations toggling between our neighborhood and a luxury condo downtown. I knew then. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. Amanda wasn't cheating. She was living in it. I went home around 2 a.m. She wasn't there. No note. No call. Just her perfume still lingering in the sheets. I laid down on my side of the bed, fully dressed. I stared at the ceiling fan spinning slowly above me. My father's death. My wife's betrayal. The strangers in my home. The silence. It all spun just like that fan, slow, relentless, and slightly off balance. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in months. I called my sister. Her name's Rebecca, older by 3 years. Tough as nails, single mother of 2, and the only person who ever told Amanda to her face that she was too self-absorbed to be a good wife. I used to defend Amanda when Rebecca said stuff like that. Now I wasn't so sure. Jake? Rebecca answered groggily. What's wrong? I think I need to get out, I said. Out of the hospital? No. Out of my marriage. She was silent for a moment. Then, about damn time. I didn't do anything that day. I just sat on the porch with a cup of coffee, thinking about all the things I'd repaired in people, organs, vessels, shattered ribs. And I wondered what made hearts so different. Why some could rupture from a simple truth and others could survive gunshots. Amanda came home that night wearing a man's hoodie. She walked past me without a word. I didn't stop her. Because something inside me had changed. Not anger. Not revenge. Clarity. This wasn't a woman who made a mistake. This was a woman who chose a different life, and forgot to tell me she'd left mine behind. And yet, part of me still didn't hate her. That was the worst part. Because I'd sworn to heal. And now I was the one who needed saving. They say every man has a breaking point. Mine came quietly, on a Sunday morning, over black coffee and the creak of our old kitchen chair. Amanda had come home just before dawn. I heard her heels click down the hallway, her laughter low, breathless. A man's voice whispered something back. Then the door closed and everything went silent. She didn't even check if I was awake. She didn't care. So I sat there at the kitchen table that morning, the same place we used to share pancakes and dreams. I watched the sun climb over the neighbor's roof, lighting up the cracks in our windowpane. It looked like spiderwebs. Fitting. Because our marriage was nothing but glass pretending to be whole. That afternoon, she came downstairs in one of my shirts. The nerve. Morning, she said casually, grabbing a bottle of water like this was just another lazy weekend. I looked up at her. Really looked. Her eyes didn't avoid mine. That told me everything. She didn't feel guilt. Didn't feel fear. Maybe she believed I'd never leave, never speak up, never be anything but the tired man in the background cleaning up the emotional mess she left behind. Was he worth it? I asked. Her fingers froze around the bottle cap. What? The guy. This time. Was he worth it? She blinked, caught off guard. Don't start, Jake. No, really. Was he better in bed? Did he tell you you're special? Did he call you queen? She set the bottle down hard. What is this? Some macho meltdown? You're not perfect either, you know. I never claimed to be perfect, I said calmly. Just faithful. Her face twitched. She didn't deny it. She didn't apologize. Instead, she crossed her arms and said, "Why are you still here if you're so unhappy?" A knife would have been kinder. I didn't answer her. I stood up, grabbed my keys, and left. I drove. No destination. Just roads and time. My hands shook on the wheel, but my jaw was locked tight. Not in rage. In something colder. Cleaner. Resolve. Because the truth had finally landed, heavy as a scalpel in my palm. Amanda didn't love me anymore. And worse, she didn't respect me. That hurt more than all the lies. I ended up outside my father's old property. It was a half-collapsed cabin near the edge of Lake Erie. He'd bought it with dreams of retirement, of fishing trips and grandkids learning how to skip stones. He only made it out there a few weekends before his health turned. Now, it was just abandoned timber and weeds. I walked through it anyway. Dust in the air. Boards creaking under my feet. A raccoon scrambled out the back window as I entered the living room. His old fishing gear was still stacked in the corner, tangled and rusting. It felt like home. And oddly enough, it felt like clarity. I sat on the back steps, looked out at the lake, and pulled out my phone. I opened the camera roll. I scrolled past all the old photos, vacations with Amanda, wedding smiles, fake moments. I stopped on a picture of me and Dad from 5 years ago, both of us holding up fish, laughing like kids. I hadn't smiled like that in years. I drove back home that evening, my mind quiet, like the calm before an incision. Amanda was in the living room, texting. "Jake," she said without looking up, "we're going to that dinner with your boss next weekend, right? You didn't forget, did you?" I walked past her. Upstairs. Opened the closet. Pulled out my duffel bag. 20 minutes later, she followed me into the bedroom. "What are you doing?" "Packing." "Why?" "Because I'm not your background character anymore." She scoffed. "You're being dramatic." "No. Dramatic would have been me flipping out when you slept with half the city. This is me finally leaving." I zipped the bag. Her voice cracked. "So that's it? You're just walking away?" I looked her in the eyes. "No. I'm walking back, to myself. To the man I used to be before I made excuses for you. Before I started believing that staying quiet was the same as being strong." Her lip trembled. But still, no tears. Because I think even she didn't believe I'd actually go. But I did. I moved into the old cabin. Cleaned it up. Replaced the locks. Scrubbed the mold from the fridge. Hung my father's flannel on the wall like a flag. It wasn't perfect. But it was mine. And yet, even out there, even with the freedom and silence, something lingered. Not regret. Not sadness. But the unshakable feeling that Amanda's story wasn't done with me yet. That behind her cruelty, her cheating, her indifference, there was something else. Something hidden. And if I didn't find out what it was, it might end up destroying me after all. Life at the cabin settled into a strange kind of peace. I started every day with black coffee and the sound of the lake kissing the shore. I fixed what needed fixing: boards, plumbing, the roof. At night, I sat by the fireplace and reread old medical journals or stared at the dusty tackle box my dad left behind. I didn't fish, but I liked holding the lures in my hand. Each one reminded me of a moment with him. A lesson. A story. Funny thing is, I wasn't lonely. I missed what Amanda used to be, not who she was now. And even that missing part was shrinking by the day, like an old bruise finally fading. But something still pulled at me. A thread I couldn't stop tugging. Her. Not out of love. Out of suspicion. There was something about how easily she let me go. Something cold in her goodbye, like she knew I'd come back, or didn't care because she had already moved on to her next act. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized, Amanda didn't cheat out of impulse. She planned it. Carefully. Repeatedly. Calculated. It was that thought that sent me back to the router logs. One night, I opened my laptop, connected to the Wi-Fi system I hadn't shut off yet at the house. Somehow, she never bothered changing the admin password. Probably didn't think I'd care. I pulled the history. New names. New devices. New patterns. 2 nights after I left, a device labeled Bryce's iPhone had been logged in and using our smart TV. Streaming trashy movies at 3 a.m. A second device, Josh_Mercedes, pinged the network 2 days later. Then, Dominic. One of them used the guest printer. That was her mistake. I remotely pulled the print logs. And there it was. An invoice. From a high-end private investigator in Columbus. Paid in Amanda's name. For a background check. On me. I printed the file remotely and drove to the house the next morning. Not to talk. To get that page. Amanda wasn't home, probably out with one of her rotating suitors. The place looked smaller now. Dimmer. Like all the joy had followed me out the front door weeks ago. I still had my key. I walked in, grabbed the printed paper from the tray, and walked back out. Simple. Clean. Almost surgical. I drove back to the cabin, sat at the table, and read it 3 times. The report was basic: my hospital records, employment history, old addresses. But one part stuck out. It said I'd been flagged for review 3 years ago when a malpractice case was filed by the family of a cardiac patient I'd lost on the table. It was thrown out. The hospital defended me. There was no merit. But I'd never told Amanda about that. She hadn't even asked. So why would she pay someone to dig into it? Unless she was planning something. The next day, I went to the hospital. I wasn't on schedule, but I needed to talk to Angela, our head of HR and an old friend. A woman who saw through nonsense like an X-ray machine. She met me in her office. I need to ask you something personal, I said. Off the record. She frowned. Okay. Has Amanda ever contacted you? About me? About my job? Angela paused. Then her shoulders dropped slightly. Jake, about a month ago, your wife asked to speak with me privately. She claimed you were using hospital resources inappropriately. She mentioned drugs. I felt the floor tilt under me. She said you kept medications at home. That you had a temper. That you were unstable after your father's death. Angela leaned forward. I didn't believe her. I've known you too long. But, the board still had to open an internal look. Quietly. Nothing came of it. Why didn't you tell me? Because we didn't want to alarm you if it turned out to be nothing. And honestly, I didn't want to give her the satisfaction. I left the hospital feeling like I just walked out of an operating room where the patient had bled out. Amanda wasn't just cheating. She was building a case. Preparing the ground. But for what? A lawsuit? A setup? A way to destroy me legally? Or was it just one more layer of control? Her final way of saying, I get the last word. That night, I sat by the lake, staring at the water, and everything came into focus. She never wanted a husband. She wanted a puppet. A reputation. And when I stopped being her trophy, the overworked surgeon who'd come home tired and obedient, she started planning my replacement. And maybe even my ruin. But what Amanda didn't know was that I wasn't the same man anymore. The man who stayed silent. The man who patched bleeding hearts without ever tending to his own. No. I was awake now. And while I wasn't interested in revenge, I was done letting her hold the scalpel. The next few days passed in a strange blur of awareness and restraint. I didn't confront Amanda. Didn't call her, didn't text. That would have given her too much satisfaction, knowing I was rattled, knowing she still had power over me. And more importantly, I needed time. To think. To prepare. To figure out just what she was playing at and why. I stayed at the cabin. Worked at the hospital. Ate alone. Slept lightly. The pieces were moving, and I wasn't going to make a mistake now. But then something strange happened. On Friday morning, just as I was finishing up a hernia repair, my phone buzzed in the OR lounge. A message from an unknown number. We need to talk. It's about Amanda. Meet me at the pier behind Harbor Point at 9 p.m. Come alone. I stared at the message. No name. No context. I almost ignored it. But something about it felt real. Urgent. Not like the games Amanda played. So I went. The night air was cold down by the lake, and the pier was empty. Dark water lapped against the old wood, and in the distance I could hear the occasional groan of a ship horn echoing from the marina. I kept my hands in my pockets, one wrapped around the handle of my old pocket knife. And then I saw him. Mid-30s. Tall. Nervous. Jacket zipped to his chin. Are you Jake? I am. He nodded like he was forcing himself to follow through. I'm Bryce. I froze. That name. Amanda's late-night visitor. The one from the router logs. The one from the picture. What do you want? I asked. She's dangerous, he said, eyes darting. I didn't know. I swear. I didn't know she was married when we met. She never wore a ring. Said her ex was abusive. That you were stalking her. Said you kept pills hidden in the walls. He looked at me, dead in the eyes. I believed her. I even offered to help. But then she started saying things. Planning things. Like what? He hesitated. Then, she told me she wanted to make you snap. That if you did, she could take everything. The house. The license. Even your name, somehow. Said she had a recorded journal, full of stories you'd never be able to disprove. I stared at him, heart hammering, the lake suddenly roaring in my ears. Bryce shook his head. And then she said something last night that scared me. What was it? She said she hoped you'd come back to her. And if you did, she'd finish what her father started. I blinked. What does that mean? Bryce looked confused. I thought you'd know. She said it like it was some inside joke. But it wasn't funny. It chilled me. Because her father was dead. He died in that shipwreck. Or so I thought. The next morning, I drove to the county records office. Requested the file on the shipwreck. My father's death certificate was in there. Date of death. Recovered items. Autopsy report. But then something jumped out at me. Passenger manifest, 18 names. Only 17 bodies recovered. And in the notes, scrawled in the margin by the coroner, one male presumed drowned, belongings on board, no confirmed remains. My father. No remains. Just a presumption. I sat in my car, holding the file, feeling like the ground had shifted beneath me. What if he hadn't died? What if the wreck was staged? What if Amanda knew something? Or worse, what if Amanda had helped? That night, I checked Amanda's social media again. Something had changed. Her account was gone. Deleted. Wiped clean. Every picture. Every post. Vanished. Even her friends' accounts had erased tags with her. It was like she'd never existed. And then, at 2:11 a.m., I got a message. Blocked number. Just 3 words. Don't trust anyone. I didn't sleep after that. Not a minute. The next day, I returned to the cabin after work and found the front door cracked open. Lights off. I crept inside, quietly, heart pounding, phone in one hand, knife in the other. And there, sitting in my father's old armchair in the dark, was Amanda. Wearing his fishing jacket. Smiling. "Hey, baby," she said softly. "We have a lot to talk about." She sat there like she belonged. Like this cabin, my father's, was hers by blood. One leg draped over the other, fingers idly tracing the edge of the chair, Amanda looked at me like I'd just arrived late to a meeting she'd scheduled months ago. I stood in the doorway, barely breathing. "How did you get in?" I asked. She tilted her head. "Your father's key was under the 3rd stone by the chimney. Same place he always kept it." I didn't ask how she knew that. I already knew the answer was going to ruin something inside me. I stepped forward slowly, hand still in my coat pocket, gripping the handle of my folding knife just in case. "I want answers," I said. "You're finally asking the right questions," she replied. "Sit down, Jake. This might take a minute." I didn't sit. I stayed standing, leaning slightly against the wall, watching every movement she made. Amanda reached into the old canvas bag by her feet and pulled out a folder. Thick. Weathered. Rubber-banded. She tossed it onto the coffee table. "You ever wonder how your father really made his money?" she asked. I blinked. "He was an electrical engineer." "Sure," she said, smirking. "And I'm just a yoga instructor." I didn't say anything. I opened the folder. Photos. Documents. Letters. And then I saw it. My father. In a cheap motel room. Meeting men in suits. Some of them looked foreign. Others, government. The timestamp spanned years, 1988, 1994, 2003, 2010. My head swam. What the hell is this? "Your dad wasn't just an engineer, Jake," Amanda said. "He was a broker. A cleaner. A shadow. He helped disappear people, cover up sensitive situations for federal agencies, corporations, and sometimes for himself." She leaned in. "And I know because I worked for one of them." My throat went dry. "You're lying." Amanda stood, stepped closer. "Do I look like I'm lying? Do I seem like someone who just accidentally found you in med school and married you because of love?" She let that hang in the air. Heavy. Acidic. "I was assigned to him first. Then to you." "What do you mean assigned?" "I'm part of a private unit. Call it intelligence. Call it private security. Call it a cleanup crew. Doesn't matter. Point is, your father made enemies. When he disappeared in that shipwreck? That wasn't a freak accident. That was an exit. A burn. But he didn't stay dead. Not for long. I could barely speak. Where is he now?" She smiled. "You'll see him soon." I didn't know if I was dreaming. It felt like I'd stepped out of my own life and into a story I couldn't recognize. Amanda walked toward the window, pulled the curtain aside. He chose to let you believe he was dead. Said it was better for the boy. But I don't think he realized what you'd become. You're smart, Jake. You look soft on the outside, but you've got something in you. She turned back to me. Something useful. I laughed, but it sounded like a stranger's voice. You cheated on me. Destroyed our marriage. And now you want me to believe you were protecting me? She didn't flinch. You needed to be hardened. Sharpened. All that pain? It was calculated. You think I enjoyed any of it? Sleeping with nobodies, making you leave? It was all to push you here. To make you stop being just a surgeon and start being something more. Something cold slid into my spine. You used me. I built you. Silence. Then a voice from the hallway. Male. Older. I told you he'd figure it out eventually. I turned toward the voice, heart in my throat. And there he was. My father. Alive. Gray-bearded, leaner than I remembered, wearing the same fishing jacket Amanda had borrowed earlier. He looked like a man who'd been to the edge of the world and crawled back. I couldn't breathe. Dad? He stepped forward. Son. I took a step back, shaking my head. I buried you. You buried an empty box. Why? Because the people I worked for didn't allow retirement. They only allow vanishing. And I couldn't risk them finding you. I stared at him. Then Amanda. Then back at him. I don't understand what you want from me. He looked at Amanda. She nodded slightly. Then he said, I want you to finish what I started. I didn't speak. I couldn't. Not while my father, my supposedly dead father, stood in the doorway of his own cabin like it was just another summer afternoon. Amanda moved to the side like a stagehand exiting scene. My father stepped into the room, boots scuffing the wooden floor, eyes fixed on me like he was examining a patient mid-surgery. You look just like your mother, he said. I didn't answer. I was still frozen between rage and disbelief. He sat across from me in the old rocking chair, the one that always creaked like a heartbeat when he rocked. I remembered how he used to sit there on stormy nights, telling me fishing stories that weren't really about fish. Now I wondered what any of those stories actually meant. I know this is a lot, he said. But there's a reason for everything. I didn't fake my death to hurt you. No, I said coldly. You let me cry over an empty coffin because you thought I couldn't handle the truth. Amanda leaned on the edge of the counter. He was protecting you. Just like I was. Don't, I snapped. You don't get to speak for him, or for me. My father raised a hand. I don't blame you for being angry. But time's short, Jake. You've been targeted. Set up. And you were never meant to live a normal life. I kept you out of the shadows, but the shadows came for you anyway. I stared at him. What does that even mean? He sighed, reached into his coat, and tossed a small envelope onto the table. I picked it up and opened it. Inside, a flash drive. And a name scrawled on the paper. Project Cascade. That night, after they both left, Amanda said she'd give me space, and my father promised we'd talk again soon. I plugged the flash drive into my old laptop. Encrypted, of course. I cracked it with some leftover code I remembered from med school IT classes. It opened a single video file. Grainy. Silent. Surveillance footage from a hospital room. My hospital. The date on the file? 1 month before Amanda and I met. In the video, a patient strapped to a gurney. Screaming silently. Convulsing. Nurses scrambling. Then the door opened, and my father stepped in, wearing a lab coat. He injected something into the patient's 30 seconds later, the patient went still. Not asleep. Dead. My father looked up at the camera, calm as a priest at a baptism. Then he walked out. The video ended. The next morning, I drove to the hospital and requested archived records from that month. Patient name, Peter Wilkes. Admitted for schizophrenia-induced delusions and aggression. Time of death, cardiac arrest during episode. Cause, unknown. Ruled, natural. But in the file, scrawled in ink I recognized, my father's writing. Unfit. Cascade failed. By noon, I was back at the cabin, sitting on the dock with the folder, the flash drive, and a mind spinning like a turbine. Amanda appeared again around dusk. "You saw it?" she asked. I nodded. "What was Project Cascade?" She sat beside me. Quiet for a moment. Then she said, "It was your father's program. A behavioral neuromod experiment run under a private Pentagon contract. It was designed to enhance surgical decision-making by suppressing emotion. Empathy, fear, attachment. Make someone faster, colder. More efficient." I looked at her, horrified. "You mean, assassins?" She nodded. "In scrubs." Then she turned to me. "You were one of the original subjects." I flinched. "What? You were 6. Your dad volunteered you, without you knowing. That's why you never cried at funerals. Why you shut down under pressure. Why you never panicked in surgery, even when you should've." "No," I said, backing away. "You're lying." "I'm not," she whispered. "That's why I was sent to marry you. To monitor how the long-term effect worked on a child subject raised to be normal." I stared at her. "You never loved me." She said nothing. "Didn't have to." I ran inside. Ripped open every drawer. Found old VHS tapes. Birthday parties. Christmas mornings. I shoved one into the dusty player in the corner. It flickered to life. There I was, age 6, sitting in a hospital bed with wires on my head, blinking as my father fed me answers off a flashcard deck. "What's fear?" he asked. "An inefficient chemical," I replied flatly. "What's love?" "Unreliable." "What's pain?" "A lesson." Amanda stood behind me now, arms folded, watching. "You were the best subject they ever had," she said quietly. "You passed every baseline. You just didn't know it." I turned slowly to face her. "What do you want from me now?" She paused. Then smiled. "Your father wants to disappear again. He's old. Tired. And they need a replacement. Someone proven." The room spun. "No." She took a step closer. "You already are what they want, Jake. We just need you to accept it." "No." And then she whispered. "You don't really want to go back to saving strangers on an operating table, do you? You want to know why you were made. And deep down, you want to finish what he started." She leaned in, kissed my cheek. "Part of you always did." I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Everything I thought I knew, about Amanda, my father, even myself, had unraveled into something monstrous. The boy who loved his family. The man who saved lives in sterile, fluorescent operating rooms. The husband who forgave betrayal. He was just a shadow. A shell built on experiments, manipulation, and silence. By sunrise, I had a decision to make. Join them, or disappear. But there was a third option. One they hadn't considered. Because unlike Amanda, unlike my father, I hadn't lost my humanity. Not entirely. Something still flickered inside me, faint, but there. And I wasn't going to let them take that, too. I returned to the hospital. For one last shift. Not to run. Not to hide, but to leave something behind that wasn't forged in lies. I scrubbed in for a complex emergency trauma. A car crash victim. Multiple lacerations, crushed ribs, hemorrhaging. As I held the scalpel in my hand, I realized I wasn't shaking. I never did. Not since childhood. And yet, for the first time, I felt fear. Because now I understood what they'd done to me. And I was scared of how much of it had worked. After surgery, I made one call. To Amanda. Come to the cabin, I said. Tonight. Just you. I'm in. She paused. I could hear her breath catch. Then, I knew you'd get there. She arrived just after sunset. Alone. Wearing that same smirk, dressed like the version of herself she knew I hated to love, short dress, trench coat, stockings. The image that haunted me ever since the funeral. You made the right choice, she said, walking inside. I know, I replied, handing her a drink. She took it. Sat on the arm of the chair. Looked around the cabin like it was already hers. And I let her believe it. Until she started to sway. Eyes blinking. Smile fading. The glass slipped from her hand and shattered. She stood, confused, stumbling toward me. What did you do? I caught her as she fell. Lowered her to the couch. Just a sedative, I said. Same one my father used in the Cascade trials. You remember those, don't you? Her lips moved, but no words came out. She looked at me, wide-eyed, betrayed, almost afraid. And that's when I saw it. For the first time, Amanda felt something real. I left her there. Unconscious. Harmless. By the time she woke up, I'd already sent everything to the press. The surveillance video of my father's death. The documents about Project Cascade. The photos of his black bag operations. Her digital trail. All of it. Burned onto copies and dropped anonymously at every major news outlet in the state. And one more thing. My resignation from the hospital. I didn't wait for the fallout. Didn't even watch the news. Instead, I drove north, past the towns, past the lakes, past the memories. Until I reached the edge of nowhere. Where no one knew my name. Where I could rebuild without shadows. A week later, in a cabin much smaller than my father's, I opened an envelope addressed simply. Jake Maddox. No return address. Inside, a single sheet of paper. No threats. No anger. Just a short sentence, handwritten in my father's script. They will come for you. I folded the letter. Burned it in the fireplace. And walked outside to the cold night air, where the sky stretched endless above me. Let them come. Because I wasn't afraid anymore. I was no longer their experiment. I was the surgeon. And this time, I held the knife.